Welcome to Make Shit Happen. My guest today is Elaine Turner. Elaine, thank you for coming and joining us in our Make Shit Happen studios, and thanks for taking a drive on this rainy morning. So thank you so much
for having me.
No, absolutely. Elaine, tell our guest, who is Elaine Turner and what is Elaine Turner about?
Elaine Turner is all about finding your self-worth, your inherent worth. I'm many things. I mean, I'm a designer, an entrepreneur, a mother, but if I had to say what I think truly defines me, it's really about guiding women to know their worth.
Wow. So I know, before we started this podcast interview, we were talking off the mic and everything. And, I was trying to get to know who you were and everything. And you told me that you were more in fashion and had retail stores. And now you're more into self-improvement and a lot for women. I mean, more focused on women. So let's talk about your entrepreneurial journey of having these fashion stores and what the fashion was about. What were you designing?
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit.
So I come from a family of entrepreneurs. So my mom owns a publishing company and my dad owned a oil service business. And so it was kind of DNA. It was in my blood that I knew I wanted to start my own business. And so right after college, I went to Dallas and fell in love with the fashion industry and then went to New York for 7 years. That's where I met my husband, Jim. And then I came back to Houston and I started doing and manufacturing handbags as kind of my first sort of entree into fashion. And I became kind of well known in the wholesale world of making these bags that were kind of all about resort wear and fantasy and all the travels that I had done as a young child to the Caribbean. And then we started opening stores and expanding our offering into handbags and shoes and clothing and jewelry. So then I really became kind of a fashion retailer, if you were, so a merchant.
Hold on. So handbags, like resort wear, beach wear. Mm-hmm. So it's like more like beach bags.
Yes.
Or what? Also clothes, or just more like purses, bags.
So I started with purses, and then shoes,
okay.
And then I started doing clothes like caftans. Everything was about this idea of travel and effortless luxury and taking women away, sort of sweeping them away into this idea of, I think kind of allowing themselves to go transport themselves somewhere else, really.
Got you. Okay.
So, and the whole brand was based on that. And we were kind of our price point was sort of that midpoint, accessible luxury price point. And then once we got into retail, we started expanding even more in all of our offering and opening up stores all around Texas. And then things sort of shifted around 2008, with the whole mortgage crisis, and then digital started to take over as well. And so that's when I started looking at things from new eyes, a new lens, and sort of trying to figure out how can I transform this business into something more sustainable over a long period of time.
And so how long do you still have that business? I mean, tell me, what's the status today?
So what I did is I transferred online, and then I started just sort of doing really small collections online. And then now I've transferred even more into the personal development industry and doing more of these workshops and speaking and e-courses for women, and really taking my collections down to being more capsule collections. So it's not all about the fashion anymore. It's not, I'm not housing tons of inventory. I'm really focused on giving women sort of essential pieces that are priced really, really well, but also incorporating fashion in a way that kind of coincides and marries what I'm doing with this personal development of how can I create pieces that empower women. They're not, there's not sticker shock. They don't feel like they have to try it on or feel, body image issues. So that's what I'm doing now, is starting to develop those capsule collections to work alongside my personal development.
Retail is tough. I mean, you got to house a lot of inventory. So, how many stores did you have at one point?
At one point we had 12.
12?
Yeah.
All over
Texas.
Yeah. So majority where?
So we had one in San Antonio, 3 in Houston, 1 in Dallas. We had 1 in New York, actually. And then we also at one point had 1 in Nashville. So I did go out of Texas.
So it was everywhere kind of thing.
I mean, those were just 2 that I did, but everything was mainly, we had an outlet in Round Rock. We had,
so 10 in Texas and then 2 outside Texas. And I mean, so you are housing a lot of inventory at that time.
Absolutely.
And then
I made and capitalized all my inventory.
Right. A lot of shift to a digital space.
Yes.
It must be challenging.
Oh, it was a huge challenge. And I think that for women, going through, it was my dream, it was my identity. And I had to do a lot of internal work to realize that it wasn't necessarily panning out like I had hoped. And that's what sort of brings in these ideas of self-worth and resilience and building the courage to tell yourself I can and will change. And I'm still worthy regardless of what's happening outside of me.
Okay. And so when did you decide you're going to close? I mean, are the stores closed
Yes,
now?
they're
All of
closed.
them?
Yeah.
So when did you decide to do that?
It's almost 2.5 years ago now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before COVID,
Yeah,
I guess.
before I know,
Before
which I keep
COVID.
pinching myself. Thank God
Yeah.
I'm not doing this during COVID.
Oh
Yes.
yeah. I mean, that would have been a little tougher.
It's just been tragic for retail.
So, you went from being this fashion designer, entrepreneur, to now, like you said, more like self-improvement, especially for women. And you even wrote a book, Breaking the Glass Slipper.
Yes.
And I love the title,
Thank you.
Debunking the myths that hold women back, Breaking the Glass Slipper. When I read this title, I think about, hey, break the glass slipper and, be free. That's what I think. That's
right.
what it
right.
means, right? Because you can't run in your glass slippers. You're cautious in what you're doing and how you're treading and how you're walking.
Yeah.
Me just reading it, that's what the title says. I've
right.
not read the book. Tell us a little bit about the book.
Yeah. So the book was really conceived, if you will, through, it's interesting and ironic, kind of through that crisis of me having to kind of transition and sort of re-identify with who I really was, right? And so I decided to write a book and really talk to women that might resonate with my story of having to sort of let go of who I thought I was and what the sort of those myths that I thought I had to attach myself to, right? So some of the myths that I talk about is, that failure defines us, when in reality, failure is just a learning step. It really is. I mean, if you feel like you've experienced failure, it's really one of those things that I think can kind of transform you into something anew, something better than you were before. So I talk about, the myth of having it all, women feeling like they have to be perfect in every area of their life, and there's really no such thing, and work-life balance, and it just goes on and on. So each chapter kind of takes these myths and deconstructs these myths. And my goal with writing it was to sort of allow women the freedom to say, you know what, even through all the things that I think that I've been told and sold and programmed to believe, I know that I'm worthy no matter what, right? Knowing that I don't have to attach myself to a false narrative. I know that I'm more than that.
So, but what I'm really curious about is, what made you write a book? I mean, people go through difficult time or transitions or changes, but not everybody thinks about writing a book.
Right.
So what gave you that idea?
So what happened is I met a woman in one of my stores who was actually terminal. She was dying of multiple myeloma, cancer. And when I met her, I had this moment where I thought, I have so much that I want to communicate to women, because she walked up to me and she said to me, it was in one of my stores in Dallas, and she said, don't ever underestimate what you do, what you create, and how it makes women feel, because I walk in here and the color and the fabrics and everything you're making empowers me, and it's what I'm wearing ultimately in my last days. And when I walked out, I thought, I had this moment when I walked out of my store and I thought, I think I have underestimated what I do. I think I never gave fashion what it deserved. I think I always kind of looked at it as like something frivolous, or, maybe I could have done more with my life. And when in that moment, I realized I had attached myself to something that was bullshit, and so I had to I felt this need to communicate to women, like, don't underestimate what you're doing, no matter if you've been told that it's not what smart women do, or it's not something that's really making a difference in people's lives. It is. Every single person here has a purpose and an identity to serve and offer and contribute. And I think that I had bought into something that wasn't true.
Well, yeah, I want to get back in the book in a second, but before I want to talk about the fashion, because, fashion is so much of your identity, right?
Uh-huh.
What inspired you to do fashion? I mean, was it one of the like a designer, like a famous designer,
right?
Like, I don't know, like a Norma Kamali or, Vera Wang kind of thing. I mean, what is it?
It's interesting. I think it goes back to those early childhood, sort of programming, if you will, of what people sort of validate you with. And when I was a young girl, I was the youngest of three, and my older brother and sister were very academic and cerebral, and I was the creative one. So I was constantly in my mother's closet, who was this beautiful, my mom's sort of this classic Texas beauty. And I was always trying on her clothes and sort of, I think, self-expression wise, looking at myself in new eyes in the mirror of like, who could I become wearing these clothes, you know, the wigs and the hats and my mom was always saying, hey, this is what you're good at. Don't underestimate. You're creative. You're visionary. You're the one that's going to change the world through how you communicate how women should dress and how women should feel about themselves. And my mom always validated fashion as a form of self-expression, not as something material. She always looked at it as an art, like wearing art, like this is who you are, the way you present yourself to the world. And so I was so young when all that was happening, and that just never left me. Even through all my academic career, I thought, well, I'm really good at fashion. You know, that's what I thought my purpose was. And I still love fashion, and I still think that there's a place for it in my future. It just has to transform into something more sustainable. And so fashion is just how I communicate myself to the world. And I think that everybody has a way that they feel their creative spirit comes through, you know, whatever that is, if it's through communication, if it's through writing, if it's through fashion, if it's through actual art. You know, I think that mine was fashion. Mine was telling that story through what I wear.
So did you ever get inspired by one of the female fashion designers?
Oh, my, absolutely.
Tell us who.
Yeah. I mean, I was really inspired by Halston. That's a male, but just his simple silhouettes, did tons of capes and structured silhouettes. I've always been inspired by Oscar de la Renta, Ralph Lauren. From a female perspective, I love designers like Trina Turk and Tory Burch, and what they've built even through COVID and sustaining their businesses through COVID. I mean, especially what Tory's been able to do over a really short period of time is create this lifestyle brand that has sustained itself even through these immense challenges. So I feel like that I was inspired by so many different designers, but I ultimately think that I knew that I had something to communicate on my own. And I think that entrepreneurial spirit played a huge role too.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you remember like the first thing you designed, or the first thing or the first store that you had?
Oh gosh, yes. I mean, I would say that.
Walk us back to that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I designed a flower pot shaped bag. That was my first bag that I ever sold and designed, and it was wrapped in grass cloth with tortoise handles, and it was a flower pot shape. And remember, the first person that I sold it to was Tootsie's. I mean, this is more than 20 years ago now. And I walked in and I had a couple of different colorways of this bag, and they said, yeah, we'll put it on consignment. Just leave it here, and as we sell them, we'll write you checks. And I thought, oh, I've made it, And so that was kind of when I knew, like, okay, I'm doing this, And so I went from there into, all different sorts of prints and textures. And then when we opened the store in Rice Village, that was my very first store in Rice Village, I remember having this sense of feeling of more in control of my destiny, because I could really control how the consumer engaged with my product versus wholesale. You ship it and leave it. You don't know what they're doing. Whereas when you have your own store,
you can see it.
Yeah. And you have the control over how the consumer reacts and how they interact with your product and who you hire to help them see what you're trying to do. And so I think that opening my stores, even though things have really changed, it was that moment where I thought, okay, I'm empowered. I can do this on my own. I don't have to have a Neiman's or a Saks dictate, how I'm going to sell my products.
And it's kind of interesting that you said that, because you can go and wholesale the thing, and a lot of people do that. And then there's people who open up their own stores.
Right.
But opening up your own store is just a total different set of challenges.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, it is.
A lot of hours, a lot of headaches.
Well, and human capital of training people and getting people to understand your vision and understand what you're trying to do. And that part of it, I think, was probably our most challenging part, was getting the right trained staff to sell the products in the way that we, give them justice, if you will. And then also just the leases, the negotiations going on behind the scenes, just stocking the stores in the right way where you have enough of the right inventory all the time. I mean, yes, you're absolutely right.
What was some of the challenges that you can probably, tell somebody who's thinking about being an entrepreneur, thinking about opening up a store, thinking about being in that arena, say, what is a mistake that you made that now you look back and say, you know what, I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have known better.
I think that I grew a little too fast.
Okay.
I think that, especially if you're talking about brick and mortar, I think that you need to be super conscious about the leases that you sign and make sure that you're not getting into you're too deep, too long term, don't overpay, and just to be a little more dramatic, I would actually today suggests you just start online. You don't do brick and mortar until you've established an online, and use your brick and mortar as a supplement to your online business versus what I did was my brick and mortar was really the core of my business.
Yeah, a lot of time people ask me the same thing. Why do I move so slow? And I'm like, when I was younger in 2000, I moved fast, and I fell really, really hard on my face. And I'm like, and that's and I always say, I'm like, hey, crawl before you walk,
Absolutely.
walk before you run, run before you sprint.
And you learned,
and learn how to run and train to run a marathon. You can't just go try to run 26.2 miles.
Absolutely. So we learn through our failures.
So I mean, that's a good advice. Don't grow too fast.
Absolutely.
Don't overextend yourself. Don't get too deep in there. And you don't understand how much, a lot of people don't listen. A lot of young entrepreneurs, they don't understand that. And that can always be a challenge. One more, tell me something. When you open up your store, you decided you're going to open up your stores. Did you understand that you're about to, how should I put it nicely? You're about to become slave to your business and you're about to work unlimited amount of hours?
I think that I had 10 years under my belt before I did it, but I don't think that I understood the chronic sort of 24-hour stress of retail. I think that I was a little naive to that. I understood working hard. I worked with my husband, who to this day we're a team, and I understood that it was going to take that, but I don't think that I fully recognized the sacrifices and the challenges that I was about to undertake. Absolutely.
And a lot of people want to be, and I was listening to Les Brown this morning, and they're talking about, how a lot of young people want to be their own boss, and he said an acronym BYOB, but be your own boss. They want to be their own boss, but they don't understand, what comes with it.
That's so true.
What would you say to somebody like, who's listening, a young entrepreneur, young, boss lady, boss mom?
I mean, I think that what I would say is I actually think that you have to get on the ground floor of understanding what it really all looks. I would say you can't just start and go, well, I'm going to own my business. I worked for years, a decade before I started my own business. And I think that you have to really get a deep understanding of business and learn through other people and mentors and also fall a little bit. You've got to fall. You've got to get humbled. You've got to understand what it really takes. You got to climb that mountain. You can't just say, oh, okay, well, this all looks so, glamorous, and I've idealized this idea of being my own boss. But the reality is life just doesn't, all of a sudden you don't snap and all of a sudden I have this perfect part-time digital where I get all this freedom, work-life balance life. You earn that over years. And I think that, some of the millennials don't really understand that, it all looks good on paper to say, well, I'm going to work X amount of hours a week and still hike and bike and have a girlfriend, all these things, without really understanding that, you have to build up to that point. You have to build to a place where you can, I think, carve and create a life that gives you that amount of freedom. Mm-hmm. It doesn't just happen overnight.
I love it. Because a lot of people don't understand that. They just see the glitz and glamour and, they think, boom.
Yeah,
it's
good luck.
Magically appears, and it doesn't happen. I mean, I love it. So I mean, I love you said it. You said it just like I would have said it, and it takes a long time. It takes a long time. It becomes. I think I had a guest in my show. I don't remember. I think it was it Jeremiah John a couple of episodes ago, and he said, what I've said before, it's a lifestyle change. Mm-hmm. It doesn't. You have to change your lifestyle to be an entrepreneur or to be a business person.
Absolutely.
And it might look glamoury and glitzy and everything, but man, you gotta fall. You gotta eat crow for a long time. For a long time. And people, and I see these memes, they're like, you think it's an overnight success. You didn't see my failures. You didn't see my you didn't see my hardships and all that stuff. And people don't see that. They love to see the thing. So going back towards Elaine Turner. You had these stores, Elaine Turner, you feel like you made some mistakes. In 2019, you decided, you know what, I'm out. Mm-hmm. I'm out of it. I'm going to go to personal development. You write a book. Mm-hmm. I love the title, Breaking the Glass Slipper. Tell me what is in this book, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Let's get take a little dive in there.
So the book is really about these key myths that I talk about that I think that sort of are ubiquitous, if you will, or universal, that women attach themselves to, that are ultimately lies. And so each chapter, so it's kind of a fun read. Each chapter is short, and it just sort of talks about not only my experience with those myths, but then also I back it up with some research, and I talk about anecdotally what I've been through. And I really wanted women to read this and think, oh my God, I see myself in this, right? Like, what does having it all really mean? And why do we attach ourselves to that ideology of having it all and the perfect work-life balance? There's no such thing, and I think that that's all kind of what we're fed by the media. Like, oh yeah, you can have it all. Really? No, you really can't have it all at the same time. There's certain seasons in your life where you're totally entrepreneurial and focused on getting profitable in your business. There's other seasons where you might have a sick child that you're dealing with that. I mean, life just doesn't all of a sudden balance itself out on a scale, right? And so I talk a lot about fashion and deciding that a lot of people look at fashion as something, I think, especially with this new era of social media, that it's kind of all about body image and money and having the best, when fashion is ultimately a very personal decision. It's really about your own self-expression. It's not about, Kim Kardashian, who has billions of dollars and can buy whatever she wants in a beautiful body. That's great. And that's awesome. And she always looks great. But it's also just about who you are as an individual and what you can wear and how it can empower you. I don't care if it's from Target or Kohl's or Neiman's. You have an opportunity to define yourself in the way that you want to communicate yourself to the world, and you can become something that maybe you never thought was possible for you. I do a lot of body image talk. I talk about the Cinderella myth and, being overly polite, and how Cinderella kind of had the perfect little body and the perfect waist, and she never stuck up for herself, and how that's all a myth. As women, there's no such thing. And so the book was really about allowing women to engage with me in these ideas, these lies, and sort of hopefully see a part of themselves and give them courage to say, I don't have to buy into that either.
Yeah. So, I'm loving what you're saying, because right now there's more women, who think they have to have that perfect body.
Yeah.
They got to have that perfect nose. They got to have these perfect cheekbones. They got to have,
Yeah.
I mean, nip tuck is at its highest, right?
Yeah.
I mean, these plastic surgeons are killing it, because every woman wants the perfect body.
I know.
Okay. And I mean, the other day I said, nobody's perfect, because God didn't make perfection.
Right. There's no such thing.
Even the angels were not perfect,
No,
right?
right.
So, but we are so much in this, the vanity is at its peak. We see these TV shows and like Kim Kardashian and whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so the body image talk, I want to talk about that. So, I mean, how do we change the mindset? How can we get someone to feel beautiful in the way they are? I mean, how do you do that?
Inside and out.
Yeah.
I think that one of the first things, and I mean, I hate attributing it all to the external, i.e. media and what we're programmed to believe, but I think that we need to see more representation of all types of people. And I do think that, Sammy, that's happening. It's with certain brands, like Somersault brand, I know it's a bathing suit brand, is doing a great job of that. I think brands like even like J. Crew's opening up to more body image diversity and ethnic diversity. So we are seeing it happen. But I think that if we don't see it as something that is validated by our society, then we don't believe that it's an image that we want to adopt, right? Mm-hmm. So what most of us see through social media and through magazines and all is ultra thin women who are kind of hangers, right? They just kind of anything they put on and I don't think that that's realistic. I think that I'm all about feeling healthy and doing everything you can, eating right. I am. I'm all about you have to treat your body as a temple. You can't just walk around and be like, I love who I am and not care. But you also, I think, have to give yourself grace around your unique genetic sort of disposition, if you will, of who you are. If you're curvy, if you're thin, all of it's beautiful. There isn't one type of body that's beautiful. And that's what we've kind of gotten caught up to, is there's one type of body, ultra skinny. And that's not true.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm a little older, so I remember, if you had a plastic surgery, it wasn't something that was like, talked about. Nowadays, everybody talks about it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, like it's become more prestigious. Like,
Look,
to do these nip tuck processes, and I mean, because it has become common and it has become part of the society. And I don't know if I want to, if I like a society like that where artificial beauty is so much welcome.
Right.
And it's crazy how things have turned.
Yeah, and I think that it's because I feel like especially women, they look at it as like it's become now just sort of this transactional, like, yeah, of course I'm going to change my nose. It wasn't perfect. But instead of reflecting on knowing that changing your nose isn't ultimately going to fill the gaps that are already inside of you. And instead of taking a step back and actually doing the more difficult work of really digging deeper internally and figuring out what's going on within you that makes you feel less than, we're doing the external quick fix, right? Spending too much money on the new outfit or the new logo or a new nose or new boobs or whatever. We aren't willing to really step back and do that work of like, no, wait, what's really going on here? Instead of, I'm just going to go fix it. And then realizing 6 months later, I'm still not happier. I have the Range Rover, I'm not happier.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a cycle. It's deadly.
It is deadly. And then you came up in October 2020. I'm sorry. First of all, I don't want to cut you off on that. The book. Is there anything more you want to tell us about the book?
I don't think so.
People need to read it if they want to know
it's
more.
on Amazon.
Go to Amazon. So where can they buy this book at?
Amazon.
Mm-hmm. And it's called Breaking the Glass Slipper by Elaine Turner. Elaine, do you have a website? Where can people find you?
ElaineTurner.com.
ElaineTurner.com.
Yeah.
So you also in 2020, in October 2020, you launched a course, an e-course for women, right? And it's called Know Your Worth. Tell us a little bit about that.
I mean, that's my baby right now is the Know Your Worth program was really born from this idea that as a woman, I think kind of battling these sort of myths of like, I'm transitioning, am I a failure, that I had to close the stores, and going through a lot of self-worth sort of reflection. And I built the Know Your Worth program as a way for women who could resonate with that and identify with that, giving them sort of guideposts and a framework of work that we could do together to kind of deconstruct what that looks like. So tools like self-compassion and resilience and meditation and mindfulness and things that we can do to kind of start to really understand and reclaim that inherent worth that has nothing to do with anything outside of you. So that's what the Know Your Worth program is about, is knowing you are worthy. It's a birthright. It's eternal. And anything that happens outside of you, your bank account, your weight, what you own, what you don't own, your husband, your children, you are eternally whole and you have an offering and a purpose on earth. I believe that strongly, that every soul here is here for a reason. And so that's what this course helps us. It's our first step that we take. It's all about self-awareness.
Self-awareness. And so why did you think it's important to launch one like that? I mean,
I felt like that we don't talk enough, and especially, I know I keep going back to women, but I don't think we talk enough about when things don't go as planned. I think so much is shiny today. It's so like you said, everything's about glamour and social media and all looks great. And I'm a girl boss and I've got the perfect body and I'm this and I'm that. And that's all bullshit. It's like, why aren't we talking about what life really is, which is twists and turns and pivots and going back and going forward, and really talking about resilience and how when you really make it and feel good about yourself, it's because you have failed and you have gone through these things where you realize, I know I'm built to deal with what life throws out at me. I can do this. I can pick myself back up. As much as we fall, God built us to rise just as much as, I think we forget that if we can fall, we can rise. We can reinvent. We can, and I think that we need to be talking about that more. We need to be talking about what rising up looks like instead of it all has to look perfect. I actually think social media is very toxic for young girls, thinking that, oh, that's what my life's going to be like. I'm going to look like her. When in reality, you need to totally focus on what God's given you, which is this individual perfect wholeness, that you have these gifts. You don't need to be looking to somebody else to fill those gaps.
That's very interesting that you think that social media is toxic for young girls.
I do.
You want to expand a little bit more on it?
I think that because I think there's so much false narrative going on about what happiness really looks like. I think that it's not even half the story of truth. I think that it's very curated moments that we put up there and by the way, I think social media has a place. I'm on it. I'm talking about myself, personal stuff, but I try to do it with authenticity, and I've seen years authenticity about who you really are and what you want to communicate. But I think where it gets dangerous is when we start sort of only sharing what we perceive as perfect about our lives as curated, which isn't true. And then people
fancy
start
vacations
and
making
everything.
making it look like everything is perfect.
Everything's perfect, and life isn't perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care how good your marriage is or how much money you made last year. It's still not perfect. I mean, we're all dealing with things that are hard.
We're
we're
dealing with hard shit every day.
Every day. And so I want to talk about that more.
Not every day. Not every
I don't
day.
know if anybody else does. But
not every day is sunshine and rainbows. Huh?
no, it's not. No.
Yeah.
No.
So you launched this program. Know your worth. So, is there anything more? Is there more programs coming? What is next?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So I'm relaunching Know Your Worth, and it's basically
Why are you relaunching it?
So I did one in October, and then I took a little bit of a step back because my mother was just diagnosed once again with stage 4 breast cancer, so I needed a little bit of time. Yeah, and I'm dealing with my mom. And so I'm relaunching it to get a bigger audience, because the first launch, I had around 40 people and it was awesome, but I feel like it has a lot of legs and I want to continue to promote it and market it and talk to more people about it.
Yeah, you want to get to 400 people.
Yeah, I do. And so that I'm relaunching that in March, and it's called Discover. So Know Your Worth is 3 courses: Discover, Awaken, and Manifest. So Discover is the first step we take, which is all about self-awareness. Awaken is the second step we take, which is all about self-acceptance. And then Manifest is all about self-compassion and what you're contributing, your purpose, your offering. And so I'm taking them on this journey with me, right? And so I'm still at the Discover phase, and then I'll relaunch Awaken later this year.
Okay, so Discover will be in March.
Yes.
Awaken will be later this year. And then Manifest probably 2022.
Yes, and that'll all be on my website if you're interested.
And so you can go to elaineturner.com. You can get more information about this.
Yes.
Now, I mean, how much do these programs cost, if you don't mind me asking?
So it's the Discover course we launched like $198. So it's about $200.
So it's not that expensive.
Yeah, no, I want it to be no. I want it to be, and I'm a part of it. I don't just. It's not just tapes of me. I get on there with you. I have Zoom calls with you. We go through the work together. They can ask me any questions. So I'm personally involved.
For less than $200, and you're right there.
Women to have
and so you're coaching them, you're guiding them, and you're with them in the journey.
Yes,
you're with them in the journey. You're one of their. You're one of their. Their I mean, how do I say it? You're accompanying them through every step right there, and so that's awesome. So Elaine, before we started this interview, you said you have a mission is to guide women to know, that they're worthy.
Yes.
So, and I'm going to go back again to you're worthy. It may mean a broad meaning, right? Women are worthy. I mean, but why women? Why you didn't do a universal? Is it because you're a woman? Is it because you know what the challenges are of being a mom, being a daughter? You told me that you have 2 daughters.
I have a son and a special needs daughter.
Oh, you have son and special.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so how old are they?
So my son is 20 and my daughter's 16.
Okay. And the 16-year-old is the special needs daughter. And I mean, people don't understand, because that's a challenge in itself.
Oh, chronic.
I mean, and now your mom is going through, diagnosed with cancer, and I'm sorry, my heart goes out to you. We'll pray for you and your family. Is it because you're a woman and you can relate?
Yeah, and I think I can speak to that. I also have a deep passion about the complexities of what it means to be a woman today, because as far as we've come with opportunity and freedom and education and all of these things, there's also kind of this impossible pressure that's put on us, and I think sometimes it's even unconscious, to be it all, do it all, have it all, because we're like, hey, look, now you have all these opportunities. You're getting the same education. You're getting a lot of times paid the same. I mean, why aren't you rising up? But the reality is, being a woman, we hold these roles like of the nurturer of the family, the heart space of the family. But we might be dual income families where we're trying to bring in the money and our husband's working full time, that I think, and we want to look beautiful and kind of be all of these things. It's not always realistic, and I think women lose a sense of themselves along the way, and I think it's just a different journey than it is for a man. I just believe that. I think that there's a lot of women who are trying hard, even in the workplace, which are like, well, I'll act more like a man, and maybe then I'll have a seat at the table, a board table, or I'll do this or I'll do that. But in reality, I just want to offer women this opportunity to say, I don't need to ultimately really change anything about who I inherently am. I need to accept what I can and cannot do with compassion and build a sense of resilience and internal worth, that I know that I'm worthy, and it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to be all of these things at the same time.
Mhm. And I'm with you on this. I mean, it's 2021, but we still,
Hard.
women do have their own set of
Yeah.
challenges. I mean, they still make less money than men,
Yeah.
and I
Most
mean,
of the
there's
time.
still
Yeah.
more challenges,
Yeah.
uh, and I mean, I'm hoping that I have two daughters. I
Ah,
hope we live in a world soon that
good.
women have very equal,
Yeah.
and I mean, I think it's a long way to go.
Yeah.
You know,
I
uh,
know. It's hard.
it's a long way to go. That's why we don't have a female president yet.
I know, which I think is so ridiculous. And I think that I do like going back to what I said. I think as much as that we've gone really far and we have all these possibilities, I think those possibilities also can create a sense of not being enough. And the fact that I'm like, am I really rising to the occasion? And then I don't know if we really have the role models we need to even get there, because we're kind of the first generation of women who are like, oh yeah, we're here, we're ready to rule the world. But how do I do that? And how do I do that where I can be the mom I want to be, the business owner I want to be, the wife I want to be, the friend? It's really hard. I think women have a unique situation there.
I do got to defend, my gender
You
at the
should.
same time because
And I love
you
it.
say women don't talk or
Yeah.
only talk about glitz and glamour.
Yeah.
Think about it. Men don't talk at
At
all.
all. Right.
They put their mask of masculinity
Yeah, it's all
all
like,
day long.
yeah, I agree with
Okay,
you.
they do not talk about what's going on with
The
their
truth.
body, what's going on with themselves. The truth. So, I mean, and for some men, it's very hard
Yeah,
to talk.
I know.
Because
Vulnerability, I think,
Yeah.
is really hard for men.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. And I think not being a man, it's harder for me to speak on that. But I think that I watch my husband navigate that in his own way of like, when we're feeling vulnerable or we're feeling like maybe there's a challenge or a failure that's occurred, he might not have that go-to intimate relationship other than me to really go there with, and I think that women have that. Women have each other to go and
Yeah.
cry in each other's arms and say, okay, I totally flopped, or
I made a, I did a Instagram.
But you're very right.
Yeah, I did an Instagram video about that, or I don't know if you put it on YouTube or not, but I did a little video and it talked about how men hide behind the mask of masculinity.
Yeah.
Women. And I said I'm jealous of women because women can go have
Yeah.
pajama parties
Yeah.
and cry to each other, right? Or they'll go have lunch together. They'll cry
no,
to
we will.
vent to their
Women
girlfriends.
Are connectors out.
Men don't do that.
I know, and it's
I mean,
a huge issue.
I mean, something may be going in our lives for a long time, and we won't tell our best friends, our friends, and or our bodies, or our,
Right.
anything. But we don't want to say it because I mean, I think when we were raised to be that man, right? That macho,
Mhm.
that okay, hey, that you have that, you got to have this, manly feeling. You
Yeah.
cannot be helpless, or you
Right.
cannot do this.
No,
So, and
you're
it's
right.
so bad for men. I mean,
know, because
worse,
men are
and I think it's
human.
worse than women.
Right. Especially that piece.
That
Women
piece.
are more vulnerable. I'm talking a little bit more about women, I think, feeling like they have to complete these roles, all these roles that they're given. But I agree with you. Women are able to be more vulnerable than men. I agree with you.
Men just don't want to do
I
it.
know.
Yeah.
I know, which is a shame, because I think being vulnerable is strength, really. It's really what we need.
But that becomes another issue because sometimes when men are not able to share and they are vulnerable, they just become, how do I say, they become not good partners
Mm-hmm.
or counterparts for the women.
Right.
And that becomes, so the whole circle, it's like a 360 circle, and just
That's
it's
right.
a bad circle, right? Because when men cannot talk and they are helpless, they feel helpless, or they are hiding behind something,
Mhm.
they do take it out on the counterparts,
Right.
and or they become less responsive, or less emotional or sensitive to the feeling of their
Right.
counterparts.
They're
And
not
I mean,
going to the root of they're reacting to what they're feeling, rather than really proactively trying to figure out what exactly is going on within me. And I think you're right. It has those consequences.
those consequences, and women, and then at that time, some women do feel different way where I think, they should also react as sensitive beings. I mean, or
Right.
sensitive to what their male partners or are feeling and stuff like that. So
But I
I
think,
just want to put that out
no,
there.
but I think just one quick thing. I think the studies and the research, you're very wise in bringing this up because as much as women claim they want vulnerability from men, there's a lot of study and research that talk about how women were programmed as well that, oh, if you're the man or you're my mate, you've got to be this hunter gatherer provider. And they're not so great at handling the vulnerability
Yeah.
coming their way. And that's a huge opportunity for women to take a look in the mirror and say, practice what you preach. If you
Yeah.
want more vulnerability, then by God, be more empathetic when the man that you love is telling you that he's not feeling great about himself. So
Exactly.
you're
You
right.
got because I mean
That's not
and
fair.
they like I mean I've seen or heard women like say he's just a sissy
Yeah,
or he does,
that's not.
and that's not good. I
That
mean,
you're very
and
wise to bring it
yeah,
up.
so I'm hoping if someone is listening, I mean,
Yeah,
they put their sensitive hats on
yeah,
or and
that's right.
and listen
Don't
to
talk about, oh, it's all good to be vulnerable and
yeah
then treat men who are being vulnerable in the wrong way.
in the wrong way.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, because men just they don't have a lot to a lot of people to go to. They don't
that's
like to go
right.
to other men. So
Mm.
sometimes your man, you might be the best person your man can talk to. So
Yeah,
be
that's
there.
right.
Give them
Absolutely.
a shoulder. Tell us, Elaine, what is next for you? I mean, what do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? Or you feel like this is something I want to do in the next 5 years?
I feel like that the Know Your Worth program is really where I'm going right now. And then I told you my book goal is to incorporate fashion within that program, kind of as another continuation of how to empower women through fashion. I'm also back in school. I'm getting a master's in counseling at
Awesome.
HBU. So I'd also like to do some private practice work where I am talking to women one on one as well. So workshops, a little, more of the community work, but also doing some personal work. So that's really where the masters come in, is wanting to do more
And still
intimate
keep
work.
the little fashion.
Yeah, and keeping fashion. That's
That's,
one of my big goals this year.
yeah. I mean, the fashion sounds like it's your passion.
Yeah, I love
You have a
fashion.
passion for fashion.
Passion for fashion.
So, is there another book in the future?
I hope so.
You hope so. What
Maybe
what do you
about
why
the
you say I hope so?
Well, because I'm so right now I've got so much on my plate dealing with just personal and career
Maybe
stuff.
maybe
But
within the next 5 years.
but maybe a Know Your Worth book. Talk
Yeah,
about the guide, the
absolutely,
guideposts and the framework for that.
absolutely. I mean, I think you can talk about stories from other people
Yeah.
and make
Yeah.
it like that
Interview. Yeah. We could talk to people in their journey.
and their
Women.
journey and their
Yeah.
interviews and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
That's a great idea.
So you
Yeah.
don't. Yeah, you can co-write it with people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Co-author
I
it.
love
Yeah,
that idea.
absolutely. Elaine, we are coming towards the end of our interview,
Yes.
and I always ask people, this question. Uh, if let's say today was the last day on Earth, and all these books you've written, all these courses you've done, all the podcasts, all the videos you did, they all get erased, and they come to you and say, hey, listen, you're 100 years old, 105, 110, or however long you live, right? And they say today's the last day, and you're about to go meet your creator. Here goes a pen and a paper. Write 3 things. These can be your 3 truths, 3 things that you want people to do, in life, conduct yourself, or 3 things you want to leave for your future generation. Those 3 truths of yours to lead to greatness, what will it be?
I would say don't sweat the small stuff is a big one. I think we as humans get very caught up in the daily challenges without looking at the bigger picture of what we're here to do. I would say cultivate your relationships. That's the most important thing, is the relationships in your life. I think that's what's really going to be there when things get tough. And I'm a huge believer in compassion and empathy and love as being the foundation of why we're all here. We're here to help each other.
Love it. I love it. A little different than what a lot of people say. So I love it. I love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Elaine, I want to thank you. I want to
It
thank
was
you for
fun.
being over here. I want to thank you for sharing this, this knowledge with us and dropping some real good nuggets over here for us. And thank you so much. And we hope one day we'll bring you back. I mean, once you have your 3 programs in and stuff like that. So
Thank you, Sammy.
thank you so much.
Okay.
Have a good one.